Hello everyone, I'm Alfian and today we are going to solve the LeetCode challenge on the challenge number 6, medium difficulty, called the Zigzag conversion. And for this particular challenge, we are using TypeScript as our language. If you want to use something else other than TypeScript, then go ahead. I encourage you to do so. And for this particular challenge, it says the string PayPal is hiring is written in a zigzag pattern on a given number of rows like this, and we have the string of PayPal is hiring for every letter, which is P A Y P A L. It is in the form of zigzag from top to bottom and then going up right diagonally. P A Y P A L I going down again, and then after it hits the bottom, it's going diagonally upwards to the right side as H, and then going down again I R I N and G, and that is the zigzag pattern that we talk about. And then the red line by line, which is the P A H N A, which is incoherent, but this is the exact answer that we want to solve. If you look to the top row right here, and then the middle row, and then to the bottom row, we have reading from the left to the right, which is from the P A H N N, which is P A H N N, and then going down A P L S I I G. If you look over here, we have the string constructor, and then the last row we have Y I N R. So this is the answer that we want to solve, and write the code that will take a string and make this conversion given a number of rows. And for this example 1, we have string parameter, which is the PayPal is hiring, and the number of rows is 3. What is it about the number of rows? The number of rows, which means that we have 3 rows to construct our new string that reads from the top to the bottom, and this is the order to read every letter, and then we return the letter as the string. And for the function itself, we have the convert function that takes 2 parameters. The first one, which is the S string parameter, and the second one, which is the num rows, in the form of integer, and the expected output is in the form of string. And we have another example right here, which is also the same string parameter, PayPal is hiring, and the number of rows is 4. And then since it is 4, it is still in the form of zigzag by creating a pattern from the top to bottom to write P A Y P, and this is the structure of the letter, and then going upwards diagonally to the right, and then A L I, and since it is already reaching the first row, then we need to go back down again, and then S H I R I going up again, and then G. If you notice the difference, we have number of rows, which is 4 rows. The first one, second one, third one, and then lastly the fourth one, and hence the number of rows is 4. And for the example 3 right here, we have only 1 letter as the string parameter, and the number of rows which only has 1, and the output is return the string directly as the answer of the function. So we can use this as the edge case, that if it is either 1 or just empty string of the S parameter, or the number of rows only 1. If it is only 1, then we can return the string as it is. Then without further ado, let's solve this out by creating an edge case. Check edge cases for empty string, 1 letter, or only 1 row by creating if check if the S string using the dot length property is below or equals to 1, or the number of rows is equals to 1. If it is, then we can simply return the S as it is. We are passing the parameter as the answer of the convert function. What happens if the string is 2 or the number of rows is higher than 1? We need to iterate over the S string using the traditional for loop. Iterate every letter along the way using A and then Y and then P. To do this, we can simply use a for loop. For if you want to use traditional for loop, then go ahead. I'm going to use the newer for loop using the for of loop. in the letter of s, and that way we are iterating every letter of the s string parameter, and then we can console.log to see if we are really logging the every letter variable into our debug window. And then for the placeholder output, we can simply return the s to fulfill the convert function temporarily. So let's test the code to see what is printing from the console.log, and we have standard output of PAYPAL, just like on the for loop iteration right here. So we off to a good start right here. And for the next one, we need to consider of every number of rows, and then we construct the structure of the string just like the zigzag string right here. Since we already know that we have 4 rows and it is always in a form of couple of letters or a string, then we can declare an array of strings based on the length of the array of the elements based on the number of rows as it already defined from the number of rows, and then we can leverage this parameter into our new array constructor, and then that way we can declare an array of string like this. And this is the string array wrapped in an array or square brackets. If we have 2 or more strings, then we can use the visualize like this. This is the number of rows. If we have 3 num rows, then the constructor will create an empty string of each element inside the array. To construct this, we can use the constant array string, and then new constructor, new array constructor that takes the parameter of number rows, and then we can chain this using the fill method, fill it with the empty string, and then we can console.log our array string, and then let's run the code again to see if it creates property of the array string. And yep, we already declared the array of string. Why an array of string instead of something else? Let me explain that array of string. Since we are iterating every letter of the array of string from the for loop right here, then we can input each letter inside of the respective element from the array using the pointer that we will work after this, and then we insert every time the iteration continues. So let's say we have P right here, which is the first letter of the S string parameter. We insert P into our first element, which is index 0, and we have A, and then we insert A into the next one, which is the index number 1 from the array string. And then for the Y, we are inserting Y into the end of the array string. Why an end of array string? Since we already declared the constructor the number of rows, which is only 3, then we append Y to the end of the array string, and then the Y will apply it at the beginning of the last index of the row. This is the last index of the array string right here, and this one is placed on the middle index or the index number 1, and this one which is index number 0, this part. To visualize this using the Excalibur draw, we have the, let's say we have number of rows using the num rows that has 3 using the black color, and then as we iterate over the string, let's say we have P as the first row, and then we assign A or append A to the second row, and then we append Y to the last row, and then after we hit the end of the array string, then we need to go up by using the indexer or the pointer that points to the index. If it reaches the end of the number of rows, then we need to go back up again, but one by one as we traverse over the S string, and then we assign P, since it is PayPal is hiring, using the PayPal is hiring, then we assign P, and then we go up again, and then we assign A. Let me use the space using this passing to minimize the issue. And then after we assign a, and then since a reached the first index of the num rows, to prevent the out of bound error or reaching the index of the -1, then we need to go down again using the if check, somehow using the if check. And after using the appending the a into our array string, then we can assign L to the second row, and then we use the I again to the last row, and then go back up again, S to the second row, and then H to the first row, and then go down again, I, and then R, and then I again, and then N, and then the last one, which is G. How do we move this array of string, since we already use a pattern like this, a zigzag pattern? To simply put, we can move this part, eliminating the visualization like this. If we eliminate all of these white spaces between each letter, then we get something like this. On the second row, we eliminate everything, and then the last row we eliminate every blank spaces, and then we already got the answer right here, but it is still in a form of array of strings. And then we can use the join method, using the join method that takes using the empty string notated by the single quote right here, single quote and then single quote again, or two double quotes like this, using the join, passing the empty string as the parameter. And then we transform this array as the whole string right here from the join method, and thanks to the join method that we got the answer just like the one from the example right here. So we can use the, I believe it was like this. Yes. Okay, so get back to our code. We can declare a pointer, that traverse zigzag in zigzag pattern. So this pointer will works like this. We point to the index 0 for the first iteration of the people is hiring string. And let me tell you something before we move on to the next topic. In this challenge, we have already working with JavaScript and TypeScript. The JavaScript or TypeScript can treat the string just like it treats an array. So for every iteration, so that is why it can be iterate using the for loop, and then we assign every letter into our array string constructor right here, and that way we can get our actual answer. And so the string can use the property of the length. It's because a string is also considered an array, but this array is in a form of string. So using the s.length right here, since JavaScript can treat a string just like an array, then the people is hiring the length of the string right here. People is hiring, we have 13 letter of the length property. Let me use the console.log to see the length, if it is really a 13 letters, using the control enter to prove this out. And we have 14. Why 14? Maybe I was counting incorrectly. Oh yes, it is 14, my bad. So it is really 14 instead of 13. So the string can be treated as the array in JavaScript or TypeScript in particular. So the pointer can work from the top to bottom to point out which row that we need to insert our letter from every iteration. As we traverse from the top to bottom, we move the index. It is starting from the index 0, and then this will assign a to the index 1, and then this one will assign using the index of 2, and then if it already hits the index of 2, using the equals the num rows -1, since num rows is pointing to the 3, and to match the index we need to use the num rows -1, and then we subtract the pointer by 1, and then we assign the letter into the index 1, since we already we were on the index 2 and then we go back to index 1 and then move again using the up direction to the index 0, and then we increment the index pointer by 1 and then increment the index pointer by 1 again, and then decrement the pointer by 1, decrement the index pointer by 1 again. So that is why we are using the let pointer index, and we declare 0 as the initial value. Declare our pointer, or I already used the command. And then for the next one, we can declare a checker to check if we already move down, and then we go back up again, and then we going down again, and then we go up again to direct the iteration that match the patterns of zigzag pattern. So to check if it's not hitting the end of the row index, then we need to go down, use the down direction. If we already hit the end of the row, then we need to go up again. We direct the pointer to go up by 1, and that way we can subtract the pointer index by 1, and then if we go down again, then we increment the pointer index by 1 again. We can use declare a direction checker using the let is moving down equals to true. For the initial value is true. Why it should be true? It's because we are moving zigzag, and zigzag always starts from the top to bottom, and then in order to go back up again, we need to move the is moving down to false, and that way we are decrementing the pointer index by 1, and that way we can assign B into the middle index, and we assign A into the top index or the index 0. And then after we already hit the A, which is the index 0, then we need to move down again using the is moving down equals to true again, and that way we can direct the pointer index to increment the index by 1, and then assign the L into the middle index and assign the I into the bottom row or the bottom index. Then we can traverse the string parameter, and then we can use the if check if the pointer index is already hitting the, like I said earlier, hitting the num rows -1. Why -1? Let me tell you again. Since pointer index always starting from 0, then we need to somehow match the last index, which is the index 2, match the number of rows using the last index. Then we can use -1, and then we get the num rows -1 equals to 2. Since pointer index of the last element is equals to true, then we can execute the is moving down to false, back to false. And then we can use an else if the pointer index. We can use the else if instead of just else, because we are explicitly define the if check if the pointer index, if it is the other way around, or the index hits the first index, which is index 0, then we can move again the is moving down variable to true, and that way we direct the pointer index back to the bottom again. And then if it is already hits the last index, then we need to direct the pointer index go back up again using the is moving down equals to false. And then for the next if check, we can use the if check if the is moving down variable is already true. To simplify this, instead of using the string equals to true check, then we can simply declare as it is, because it is already a boolean value. If the is moving down is equals to true, then we need to move the pointer index by 1 using the plus notation. And then we can use the else, because why just else instead of else if? It's because is moving down only has either true or false, not the other value other than true or false, just two values or two states. If it's a false state, then we can use the is pointer index, decrement this by 1. Instead of using pointer index plus or a pointer index minus every time we hit the last index, we need to actually put this into our assignment of every letter from the for of loop using the one from we already declared before, using the array string. Don't forget to wrap the pointer index plus plus inside the square brackets to define the current index using the pointer index variable, and then we can use the plus equals, seeing the letter itself that takes the letter from the for of loop, and that way we are assigning, since array string pointer index plus plus, y pointer index plus plus, and then we assign the plus equals as the letter, and that way, let me iterate this again from the beginning. We have the p right here. We have the p from the first iteration of the by-Paul is hiring, and then the next one, after we assign p, the pointer index plus plus will points to the index 1, and we move the pointer by 1, and as we assign the letter, we already assigned the p into our array string constructor from before, and we still assigning p into the index 0 instead of index 1, and then that way the state of the pointer index already assigned the letter into index 0, and after this code already execute, the pointer index will be incremented by 1, and then the pointer index state will be equals to 1. It is the same thing as using the pointer index plus plus directly assigning to this one, and to make this more verbose, we can move this pointer index plus plus by using the just pointer index right here, and then after the pointer index array string assigning the letter into based on the pointer index, then we assign pointer index plus plus, and that is the same thing as the one that we already declare right here. If we declare the plus plus and then we eliminate this one, that is the same thing. What about the plus equals sign? It is the same thing as, let me make this more verbose, the first one, which is the pointer index plus plus, index plus plus. After we assign the array string of the index 0 as the letter, adding the letter into the array string variable, and then we move the pointer index by 1, incrementing this by 1, and then the plus equals is the same thing as using the equals array string of the pointer index, and then plus the letter, and that is the same thing as using the plus equals letter, and then eliminate this one, and then we assign this plus plus. The same thing goes to the minus minus sign using the array string pointer index minus minus, and then plus equals to the letter, and that way we are assigning p, and then at the same time we are moving the array index by 1, and then we can assign a, and then ultimately at the same time we are assigning the pointer by 1, which is points to the index 2, and then we can assign y. After we assign y, then we automatically move or reduce the index by 1 using the p, and then we assign p, and then at the same time we are assigning a into the index 0. Let us go back to our implementation. Instead of using the pointer index of the numbers -1, we can use the strictly equal sign, or if it is equals or above the numbers -1, to check if it is the last index or the index after the last one. That way we can handle this properly. Okay, so how about the last one? Since it is already declared right here, and the structure will be like this. If we go back to our code and see the answer is in the console.log, we want to see the array structure, we can use the console.log, and then we console.log array string, pass in the array string variable, and let's eliminate this one, and then we can run the code again to see what is it about. And there you have it. We have PAHN, and then for the second row we have APL as IIG, and then for the last row we have YINR. What about the case 2 or the example 2? Yep, we have PINN for the first row or the first index, and then ALSIG on the second row, and then the third row like this, and then the last row is going to be like this. Okay, how do we append this array string as one? It is fairly simple. We can simply return array string that takes the join method, and we can use the empty string as the parameter of the join method. So let's run the code again to see if it works. And there you have it. Okay, so that's about it. I hope you understand my explanation. If you still don't understand, you can ask me in the comment section, or if you have any better solutions regarding this challenge, tell us what you think in the comment section. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.